ready to roar like a lion. God's not dead.
We have an experience as believers with God. The question is, how can you demonstrate that? And so I wrote this book called God's Not Dead, and really it was laying out the evidence for God, not only scientifically, philosophically, historically, and then ultimately the living proof of us as believers. If you've seen the movie, there's a Chinese student who stands, who's being challenged by the presentation in this. It's a classroom drama about a young student challenged to prove that God exists in front of the whole class, in front of the whole philosophy class. And so that student in the movie was based on a real friend of mine who came from China to Harvard as an atheist, and a professor at Harvard led him to Christ. His name is Ming Wang. He's a doctor in Tennessee. But anyway, I'm driving down the road in Louisiana with a friend of mine, and I was describing to him this book I'm writing, and he said, I think that needs to be a movie, and I know a movie company. Picks up the phone, calls the movie company. They fly to Tennessee. I described to them, here's how you present the evidence for God. They followed me out to UCLA and watched us interacting with students. And the screenwriters put together a script based upon these stories. And so really, really honored to see this movie out and see what it's doing. More than anything, I believe it's giving confidence to believers that there is evidence for our faith. Real faith is not blind. Contrary to the skeptic's challenge, we have a faith that is based on evidence. The problem is, it's not that we have a lack of evidence, is that the evidence points to a God that most don't want to submit to. My older brother was an atheist. He was in law school, and when I became a Christian, he came home to talk me out of the Christian faith. My brother began to study the Bible to find the contradictions in it. He was at the top of his class at law school. He had a master's degree in psychology and counseling. So to him, his little brother becoming a born-again Christian, he actually went to a fellow, a law student, and said, I'm going home to get my little brother out of this born-again thing. So my brother started studying the Bible to find the contradictions. I love when people say, the Bible's got so many contradictions. And I'll say, okay, well, let's talk about it. And I'll hold it out to them. Of course, they've never been that close, so they kind of back away. And they go, well, there's just so many. And I go, good, it ought to be easy to find one. And then I'll usually agree with them. I'll say, the Bible does have a lot of contradictions. I'll agree. It contradicts most of what you're doing. You see, most people don't like the Bible not because of somehow, really what it comes down to is they don't like what they see about themselves. I remember one of the first times I looked into my mother's makeup mirror. My mom had a mirror with two sides to it. One side was normal, and the other side was magnified with lights all around it. And I remember the first time I turned that mirror over and turned the lights on and looked down at my face, magnified under the lights, and understanding at that moment why women wear makeup. Because I wanted to put some on. You see, everything looks good in the dark. When I was in college, I didn't need the money, but my parents were well off, but I worked in a bar as a bouncer just for fun. And one of the favorite things I got to do was turn the lights on at 2 a.m. when it was last call and watch people who had met one another in the dark and looking at the fright on this woman's face, trying to get her phone number back from the man that she thought was a lot more handsome in the dark. Light is something that we don't want because Jesus said, men love the darkness rather than the light, and they don't come to the light because their deeds are evil. But he who comes to the light, see, God is light.